which is that, obviously Andrew Yang is running away with the mayoral race right now in New York City, and seemingly the media's attacks against him are only making him stronger. I'm really surprised that they're even attacking him that much, because he seems to have clearly signaled that he's going to be a normie Democrat, and he's not really going to resist capital or the establishment or any of that. He's not really even going to raise taxes, apparently. So I don't know why they're so afraid of him, but they are. And there's been just a string of hit pieces on him from establishment papers, especially the New York Times, just one after another, most of which are totally unfair, and that, frankly, like I said, are making him stronger. But this new piece out that I took a look at, and that I think you did too, Zach, I think this one actually has a point. I think this is actually a well-written piece that does a pretty good job explaining kind of the I don't know what to call it, the ruse that was Venture for America, Venture for
right? America.
Yeah. And we can go through this piece, and I want to specifically hear, obviously, the insight you had as someone who was in this world, or at least, part of it for a little bit.
Yeah, well, I guess if the first thing that I would say about Venture for America is I'll just give people a brief synopsis of what he was intending to do, because it is kind of one of those like sexy Silicon Valley sales pitches, right? And he's like, we need to have more smart people making things, man. So let's just have a bunch of these kids who essentially what it is you apply, and it's a bunch of kids from like, Duke, state universities that are in maybe not usually the Ivies, but just like more prestigious kids from state universities, people who really want to be business people, right? And you go through all this kind of, they make you jump through this application process hoops, and they pair you up with a startup. As a recent college graduate, they'll pair you up with a startup that's not in what would be considered like a booming city, right? So you'll get sent to like Detroit, New Orleans, somewhere in Virginia. For a while, they were sending people to Austin, Texas, I think, but now Austin, Texas is a little too hot. I don't think you can get sent to Kansas City, where we're from. You can go to like St. Louis, right? So somewhere Cincinnati. Those are the kind of places that they're trying to have people build startups. But the fundamental flaw with this kind of thing, and as we'll get into with the piece, is that these startups, wherever they are, they all get bought by West Coast money. They all get bought by Silicon Valley money. So it doesn't really matter where you start. They're going to get acquired, and then they're just going to bring you to whatever office that they had before. So it's not really building an economy in these places. You're just putting a few more affluent people, because the minimum wage that you can actually get paid by these startups when you come out of college, and what makes it enticing to like a lot of people to apply, is the minimum that they can pay you is $50,000.
Right. And as it says here, but unlike most of his opponents, he has not worked in government or managed any large organization. Indeed, the most extensive leadership experience of his life was at the helm of Venture for America. And normally, I don't care about the critique. You haven't worked in government, or you've never had an position of power. Normally, I'm a fan of outsiders. But if it is true that the most extensive leadership experience of his life was at Venture for America, I do believe it's fair to look into the results of Venture for America, right? So as it says here, with the zeal of an evangelist, Yang raised tens of millions of dollars for the organization, with the goal of creating 100,000 jobs in cities where they were most needed, such as Detroit. Obama even declared him a champion of change. Isn't that quite a moniker?
Fucking Silicon Valley. Anyway.
Champions of change.
And paved the way for his political career. And he's talked about that. He even talked about that a lot during his 2020 run, how he was declared a champion of change by Obama.
Champions of change.
But, as this piece goes on to describe, the goals of Venture for America never really materialized. I think one of the most damning facts is down here at the bottom of the piece. This whole piece is worth reading.
Yeah, it's long, but it's good.
So, as it says here, none of the fellows live in Detroit today. This is of the group that tried to start a business in Detroit. Only one of them founded a business that even got off the ground in the first place, which was Banza, a chickpea pasta manufacturer that is Venture for America's biggest success story. It now produces its pasta in California. So basically, all of the companies that were successful in any sense were immediately just co-opted by the very system that they were designed to be in opposition towards. These companies the whole idea is, we're not just going to go to Silicon Valley or to California, to the coasts, to make money where it's most profitable. No, we need to bring business back to areas like Detroit, communities that have been left behind. But as soon as these companies got any size at all, they just fled to the coast. They just did and acted like every other startup, like every other company in existence, proving that, capitalism in this country really can't just be reformed by some nifty gimmick like Venture for America.
Yeah. So for a little bit of backstory, for anybody who doesn't know, I will fucking confess to the fact that I was in business school at one point. I dropped out of film school, was fucking up. And anyway, I entered into business school and I ended up getting this internship at a venture capital firm, right? This is radicalizing shit if you've ever been on the inside of one. But anyway, the whole pitch, right, that made it sound all sexy and interesting was that they were only going to invest in companies that were based in Kansas City. Whatever. I was like 19. I thought it was cool that whatever. I hadn't necessarily I was a progressive. I would have told you I was a big Bernie guy, but I didn't necessarily come around to like being a fucking firm anti-capitalist yet. So I was still kind of observing all this shit. But either way, the companies that they were investing in would all have to be founded in Kansas City. But the most successful thing that with the small venture capital, they're called the venture capital sidecar because they only invest in funds that they can get a bigger fund to invest in, but that's just industry bullshit. They all wanted the companies to just get bought by a fucking whale at the end of the day, right? They wanted these companies to fucking get bought by a big time person. That way they could pay out their fund, right? So it kind of builds up this illusion that Kansas City, and I'm sure they have this in a bunch of other cities as well. One of the kids, the guy that they ended up like kicking me out for was they got a guy from Venture for America that ended up taking over my job, and they booted me to another startup where I became an intern there. And go fucking figure, that startup immediately got acquired by a fucking a
bigger fish.
Yeah, exactly. A Silicon Valley equity firm, essentially.
Yeah, and that's how it usually goes. Again, so I think that a lot of the media smears of Andrew Yang are just that. They are smears. And a lot of times I feel like their eyes not really on the ball. They're not talking about the criticisms of Andrew Yang that Zach and I have, the fact that his UBI seemingly might be at the expense of certain social safety net programs. And obviously that's his UBI that he ran on in the presidential run, not anything he's running on as a mayor. But that being said, there's a lot of concerning aspects of his mayoral run as well, including how he's talked about making New York City a smart city. I don't like that. That's not something that I want to hear about from someone who might be in control of the biggest and most influential city in the country. So there's a lot of issues that I think should be covered more when it comes to Yang's candidacy. But I did think this was a pretty decent piece when it came to breaking down Venture for America. And again, kind of the fraudulent nature of its promises. At the end of the day, the only success stories that came from Venture America just immediately became like what they were supposed to compete with, essentially.